The wind cut through the trees like 1,000 knives, cold and sharp, and she stumbled through the undergrowth, each step slower than the last. Her breath came in ragged gasps, misting in the icy air, and she could feel the ache in her ribs with every heartbeat. Behind her, the snapping of branches echoed. No, not branches. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. She dared not look back. Fog clung to the forest floor, curling around her ankles like ghostly fingers trying to pull her down. The sky above was a roiling grey, threatening snow, threatening rain. And somewhere deep in her chest, a fire stirred. A power she had never fully mastered. It whispered to her in moments like this, a sharp, insistent thrum, warning her, urging her. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. Please, just not today, she whispered to herself, clutching her side, blood seeping through the torn fabric of her jacket. Every instinct screamed to keep running, to vanish into the shadows, but something else, something dangerous simmered beneath her fear. She could feel it in her bones. She was not weak, not anymore. Her legs faltered as a branch snagged her hair and she fell to the cold, wet earth. Her hands scraped against the mud, her palms bleeding, and she tasted iron in her mouth. Panic surged, hot and bitter, and she gasped, "I can't, I won't." Then a voice, a whisper of wind, almost human, tugged at her awareness. She froze, heart hammering, eyes wide. Someone was coming, not the hunters behind her, someone else, someone powerful. "Before we continue, I want to prove my mom wrong. She said I couldn't hit 1,000 subscribers, so please, subscribe. And my friends keep saying this is a waste of time. Help me prove them wrong." Then he stepped out of the shadows, silent as a storm. Tall, broad, cloaked in darkness and authority. His eyes, amber as molten gold, pierced through the fog and landed on her trembling form. He knew her name. He had known her before she even crossed his path. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice low, almost a growl, but with a note of concern threading through it. She scrambled backward, unsure whether to scream or collapse. Fear burned like acid, but there was something else, something magnetic that pulled at her gut, made her heart beat faster. She wanted to run, but her legs refused. He knelt, slowly, deliberately, keeping his gaze on her, studying her like a wolf marking its territory. Yet there was care, not pity, not tenderness. Not yet. Care. And it made her ache in ways she hadn't known she could. "I've been watching you," he admitted. The words were simple but heavy, like a weight settling in her chest. Not to hurt. Not to hurt you. Something about him unsettled her. Powerful, dangerous, but not cruel. And in that moment she realized how very alone she had been, and how very much she needed him, though she would never, ever admit it aloud. She pressed her back against the wet bark of a tree, shivering, not from cold but from memory. She remembered the pack, the whispers, the judgments. Too dangerous, too wild, unfit. They had cast her out like a shadow, left her to fend for herself in the wilderness of her own life. Her power had always been a curse in their eyes. Silver flames, eyes that burned like molten ice when she shifted. Claws that could rend stone. They had feared her, rejected her, and she had believed them for years, hiding, shrinking, pretending to be small. Yet now she felt it rise within her again. The spark she had tried to smother, the fire that could not be caged, she wanted to believe in it, wanted to believe in herself. And somehow, he had seen it. "Why do you stare at me like that?" she whispered, voice trembling, yet defiant. "I see you," he said. Voice soft now, almost reverent. "All of you, not just the parts you hide, not just the parts they feared." And in that moment something fragile bloomed in her chest. Trust, or the beginning of it. Something that whispered maybe, just maybe, she wasn't meant to be alone. The forest opened before her like something out of a dream, or perhaps a memory. Ancient trees stretched toward the sky, their limbs twisted into shapes older than time itself. Moonlight filtered through the canopy in silver beams, painting the forest floor in a mosaic of light and shadow. Every step she took felt like she was walking not through trees, but through the heartbeat of the world itself. He led her to a clearing she hadn't known existed, and yet it stirred something deep inside her, as if recognition bloomed in the marrow of her bones. Stone pillars encircled the space, etched with runes that shimmered faintly, pulsing like a slow, deliberate heartbeat. The air hummed with power, ancient, vast, unyielding. "Do you feel it?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper, though it cut through the silence like a blade. She swallowed, her throat dry. Every nerve in her body vibrated with the invisible energy that filled the clearing. Her heart thumped erratically, half fear, half wonder. "Yes," she breathed. I think I do." "This place remembers you," he said, stepping closer, amber eyes reflecting the moonlight. "It's been waiting. They've all been waiting." She turned to him, confusion clouding her features. "Waiting? For me?" A rustle of leaves answered her question before his voice could. A figure stepped from the shadows, an elder of a distant pack, robes dark as the night itself, eyes gleaming with knowledge and recognition. "You are the one," the elder said, voice echoing in the clearing like wind over stone. "The one with the mark, child of the flame, the prophecy. It speaks of you." Her stomach dropped. The stories she had heard as a child, whispered tales of power and ruin, flooded her mind. The pack had called her cursed. The world had called her dangerous. And now, prophecy. Destiny. Weight pressing down on shoulders already aching from exile. I don't understand," she whispered. Her hands trembled as the silver fire of her unclaimed power tickled her skin, teasing, urging her to wake. "Why me?" "Because you are the balance," the elder said. "The flame that awakens the pack, the wolf that binds us all. And yet, beware. Many will fear you, many will try to control you, and many will try to destroy what you are before you can claim it." She felt the pull then. Something deep, instinctive, and powerful. A thread tugging at her soul, at her very bones. A destiny she had never wanted yet, could no longer deny. Fear threatened to clutch her heart, but under it surged something else. Power. The raw, untamed, beautiful, terrifying power she had hidden for so long. He stepped closer again, his presence a solid anchor in the whirlwind of prophecy and power. "You won't face this alone," he said. "I will stand with you. But you must choose. Will you accept what you are, or run as you have for so long?" Her breath hitched. She wanted to run. She wanted to bury herself in the shadows of her past, forget the prophecy, forget the power, forget the world. But as she looked at him, at the strength in his stance, the unwavering belief in his eyes, she felt something she hadn't allowed herself in years. Hope. Something inside her stirred, and it roared like a wolf from the depths of the forest. She realized then, with a clarity that shook her to her core, that she could no longer hide. Not from the prophecy, not from the world, not from herself. Her hands clenched into fists, silver sparks licking her fingers like tiny living stars. She could feel her heart sinking with the pulse of the forest, the whispers of the earth, the ancient call of the wolf blood that ran through her veins. The flame. "It's waking," she whispered. "Good," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Because when it rises, everything changes. And you will lead that change." A cold wind blew through the clearing then, carrying the scent of something older, deeper and more dangerous. Somewhere beyond the trees, shadows shifted. Eyes glinted in the darkness, watching, waiting, threatening. The world was not yet ready for her, but she was ready. Terrifyingly, beautifully, fiercely ready. The serenity of the clearing shattered in an instant. A scream high and feral ripped through the night air. Shadows spilled from the tree line like spilled ink, figures moving too fast, too silent, too deadly. Rival alphas, disgruntled pack members, wolves twisted by jealousy and fear. She froze, every muscle taut, every heartbeat amplified by terror and adrenaline. The silver fire within her responded instantly, flickering along her skin, illuminating the clearing with its eerie, shimmering glow. He stepped in front of her, body coiled like a spring, eyes blazing with protective fury. "Stay behind me," he growled, and then the clash began. Steel met claw, growls met screams, and the world around them became a blur of motion and chaos. She wanted to run. Part of her screamed to flee, to escape, to hide. But another part, the part that had longed for acceptance, for power, for recognition, rose in defiance. She shifted. Just a flicker at first, wolf ears, sharp claws, eyes glinting silver, but enough to send the attackers faltering, their confidence breaking under the sheer force of her presence. She tasted freedom, she tasted rage, she tasted power. Amidst the chaos, his hand found hers. Not to restrain, not to guide, but to anchor. And in that touch, she found clarity. She could not run, she could not hide. She had been chosen, and she would rise. But even as the last of the attackers fled into the shadows, she felt it, the seed of doubt. How many would still fear her? How many would betray her? How many would try to destroy what she had only just begun to embrace? He looked at her then, eyes soft, almost tender beneath the storm of fury. We fight together, or we fall alone. Her heart ached with fear and longing. And she realized then that this connection, fragile and dangerous, was what grounded her. It was what would guide her when the world tried to tear her apart. The forest was quiet now, but it was a fragile quiet, the kind that promised storms lurking just beyond the tree line. Smoke from a small fire curled lazily into the night sky, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and pine. She sat across from him, knees drawn to her chest, shivering. Not from cold, but from exhaustion, from adrenaline, from the raw ache of fear finally giving way to something gentler. He handed her a simple cloth, warm from the fire. "You need to rest," he said, voice low, careful, almost hesitant. There was an undercurrent there she couldn't name. Something protective, something personal. She accepted it, hands trembling, and let him dab at the blood on her arms. Every brush of his fingers sent sparks of awareness through her, tiny fires that whispered to her senses. Her pulse quickened. She looked up, and he was watching her. Not the predator, not the savior, not the dangerous alpha. Just him. Just the man who had chosen to stay, who had stood by her while the world had tried to tear her apart. "You don't have to trust me," he said suddenly, almost a whisper, as if speaking it louder would break the fragile thread of connection. "But I hope you do, because I see you, all of you. The parts you hide, the parts they feared, the parts even you don't believe in yet." Her throat tightened. She wanted to laugh at the irony. After all these years being feared, being cast out, being hunted, someone finally saw her. Truly saw her. And it terrified her more than any pack, any rival alpha, any shadowy threat ever had. I don't know if I can," she admitted. Her voice shook. "Trust doesn't come easy. Not for me." He leaned closer, his presence a tangible weight, warm and grounding. "Then start small," he murmured. "Let me in, just a little. Just enough to see that maybe you don't have to face this alone." Her chest tightened with longing and fear, and before she could stop it, she let herself lean closer, just slightly, a hair's breadth. Enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him, enough to feel her own heart betray her, enough to want more. They sat like that for a long, suspended moment, firelight flickering across their faces, the world beyond the clearing falling away until nothing remained but the two of them. "Tell me about him," she said suddenly, her voice a fragile thread. She didn't mean him. She meant her past. The one she'd tried to bury. The one she'd run from for so long. He stiffened, pain flashing across his features for the briefest moment, and then he exhaled slowly. "I was not always like this," he admitted. "I was broken, betrayed. I trusted once, and it cost me everything. That's why I'm wary. That's why I hesitate. But when I saw you, I felt something I haven't in years. Something worth fighting for." Her eyes filled with tears, hot and unexpected. She reached for his hand, unsure if it was strength she sought or comfort, or both. I've been afraid my entire life," she whispered. "Afraid of what I am, afraid of who I am, afraid of being too much, too dangerous, too alone." He lifted her hand to his lips, brushing it with his thumb, lingering in a way that set her skin alight. "You are not alone," he said, voice barely above the crackle of the fire. "Not while I'm here. Not while I breathe. You don't have to be afraid anymore." And in that moment, for the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe it, just for a heartbeat. That maybe finally there was someone who would not run from her, who would not fear her, who would stand by her side through the darkness and the storm. The fire crackled, sending sparks into the night air, and somewhere in the shadows, she felt the pulse of her power stirring. Not just the silver flame that had flickered faintly before, but something deeper, something fiercer, something she had only glimpsed in dreams and whispers. A shiver ran through her spine, half anticipation, half fear. And he noticed. His eyes, gold and unwavering, softened as he placed a hand on her shoulder. "Soon," he whispered, "you'll see just how powerful you truly are. And I'll be here, every step." Her heart ached. Hope and fear tangled inside her, sharp and sweet. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust him. She wanted to surrender just a little, just enough to see where it would lead. And as the firelight danced across the clearing, painting them both in gold and shadow, she felt it, the first stirrings of love, fierce and terrifying, that promised both salvation and chaos. But even in the quiet, even in the warmth of connection, she could feel the tension of the world pressing in. The shadows beyond the clearing shifted, whispers of danger, whispers of betrayal. And somewhere deep inside, she knew the storm was far from over. She didn't know it yet, but the peace of this night was fragile. So fragile it could shatter with a single word, a single glance, a single act. Forces were gathering, eyes were watching. And when the world finally turned against her, she would have no choice but to claim what was hers. Fully, unflinchingly, and without hesitation. The fire crackled one last time before the wind snatched at its embers, carrying whispers of the coming trials. She held his gaze, trying to memorize the way his eyes reflected hers, trying to hold on to this moment because the night was soon to be ripped apart and everything would change. The dawn broke over the valley like a fragile promise, but its light felt cruel, harsh, as if mocking her. She had trusted. She had believed. And now, everything she had clung to was slipping through her fingers. It began with whispers, soft, venomous, curling around her name like smoke. The White Luna, dangerous, unfit, cursed. They said it quietly at first, in shadowed corners, in hushed tones, but soon the murmur grew into a roar. Eyes turned toward her, cold, accusing, fearful. Wolves she had once counted as allies recoiled, their gaze sharp, filled with suspicion and anger. And then the words cut deeper than any claw. "They lied!" someone hissed, stepping forward with a cruel, gleaming smile. "She isn't who she says she is. The prophecy. It's a trap. The girl with the silver flame will destroy us all." Her chest constricted. Her heart pounded so violently it was a miracle she could even breathe. Faces she had trusted twisted into masks of hatred and fear. Her power, the very thing she had hidden, the thing that had made her an outcast, was now weaponized against her. He was there, standing beside her, amber eyes blazing with protective fire, but even his presence couldn't stop the world from crumbling around her. For a heartbeat, she thought he might falter, thought he might let them tear her down. But he didn't. Not completely. The council stepped forward, robes dark, faces severe. Their accusations fell like stones on her chest, relentless, cold, deliberate. "Step forward, White Luna. Reveal your true self or leave our lands forever." Her hands shook. The silver fire of her blood pulsed through her veins, furious and impatient. She wanted to deny them, to run, to hide. But no. No more hiding. No more fear. No more submission to the judgment of those who had never understood her. And then it happened. Her form shimmered, subtle at first. A flicker of silver light dancing across her skin. Her hair caught the sunlight, blindingly white, and her eyes, golden, fierce, untamed, locked onto the assembly. Her body shifted, sinews tightening, muscles rippling as fur brushed her skin. Every movement was graceful, terrifying, perfect. She stood taller, prouder, more powerful than they had ever imagined. Gasps rang out, wolves backed away, rivals faltered. Some fell to their knees, their heads bowed instinctively. Even the council's stern faces cracked, disbelief etched in every line. The alpha beside her moved closer, eyes never leaving hers. "I told you," he said softly, but with iron in his tone. "All of you doubted her, and all of you were wrong." Her heart thundered in her chest, half in fear, half in exhilaration. Power surged through her, silver flames licking at her skin. The weight of prophecy and destiny settling onto her shoulders like armor. She was no longer the frightened exile. She was the White Luna, the one foretold, the one who would change the pack forever. And yet, betrayal cut deep. Even as the light shimmered around her, even as the pack bowed instinctively before her emerging form, she could feel it. Someone had betrayed her, revealed her secret, manipulated her, twisted her story for their own gain. Rage flared, hot and sharp, mixing with sorrow, twisting into a fire that refused to be ignored. "I am not your sacrifice," she growled, voice carrying across the clearing like a whip of lightning. "I am not your pawn, I am not your fear. I am me, and you will remember it." The wind responded, carrying her words across the valley, shaking trees, rattling the ground. Wolves trembled at her presence, awe and fear mingling in their eyes. Her flames surged higher, brighter, a physical manifestation of her resolve, and she knew with absolute clarity that nothing would ever make her bow again. Even the alpha, strong and unwavering, took a step back, giving her space to claim herself fully. His hand hovered near hers, a promise and a warning. She could feel his support, steady and unflinching, even as the world threatened to collapse around them. "Do you see now?" she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "Do you see what I am?" Silence answered her, thick and electric, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the soft crackle of her flames. And somewhere in that silence, the seeds of vengeance, of change, of destiny began to root themselves deep inside her heart. The first betrayal had come. The first storm had broken. And she had survived. She turned to the alpha beside her, and for the first time no fear softened her gaze. Only fire and resolve, and the unshakable knowledge that her destiny was hers alone to claim. "You will see," she murmured, silver flames dancing along her fingers. "I am not your pawn. I am the White Luna, and this is only the beginning." Even as the pack reeled from shock and awe, shadows beyond the clearing shifted. New threats, more dangerous than before, whispered in the wind. Rivals would rise, betrayals would follow. But she would face them all, head held high, flames roaring, heart unyielding. The world had tried to break her. The world had tried to cage her. But she was awake now. She was powerful. She was hers. And no one, not council, not rival, not fear, would ever take that from her again. The ground trembled beneath her feet, small cracks forming in the soil like veins of silver lightning. The wind howled through the clearing, tugging at her hair and clothes, carrying with it the scent of rain and ozone. She stood at the center, the full weight of her destiny pressing down, and yet lifting her higher, stronger. Her silver flames surged outward, licking the sky, casting everything around her in an otherworldly glow. The enemy had arrived. Shadowed figures, rival alphas, and their followers, all armed with malice and fear, converged on the clearing. They thought her fragile, thought her powerless. They had no idea what the White Luna was capable of. She lifted her chin, golden eyes flashing, muscles coiled and ready. "This is your last warning," she said, voice echoing with authority and fire. "Leave now, or face what you could never imagine." For a heartbeat, there was silence. The air thickened, heavy with tension, the smell of ozone and fear mingling like storm clouds. Then, with a roar that shook the treetops, they attacked. Her body moved with instinctive precision, faster than any wolf, fiercer than any flame. Claws of silver ripped through shadows, teeth gleaming, eyes ablaze. Every step she took left sparks in her wake, the earth itself responding to her power. Trees quivered, stones cracked, and the very air seemed to hum in resonance with her energy. The alpha beside her fought as well, but he knew. This was hers. This was her moment, her destiny, her power unleashed. He stayed close, protective, a steadying presence, but it was her fire that burned brightest. Her claws and fangs that struck hardest, and then she roared, full, unrestrained, and the silver flames exploded outward, sweeping across the clearing like a tidal wave of light and heat. Shadows fled. Rivals faltered, eyes wide with terror. The pack watched in awe, some falling to their knees, some trembling, all realizing that the prophecy had come alive before them. She felt it coursing through her veins, the flames of her ancestors, the strength of every white luna before her, the heartbeat of the forest, the pulse of the earth itself. She was unstoppable. She was inevitable. She was hers. And then the true threat emerged. Not a rival alpha, not a jealous counselor, but something older, deeper, more dangerous. A creature of shadow and malice, drawn to her power, intent on claiming or destroying her. Its eyes glowed like coals in the dark, and every instinct in her screamed danger. But fear did not reach her. Only fire, only power, only purpose. She advanced, claws slicing the air, silver flames erupting around her. The world held its breath, the forest trembling as if it knew this was no ordinary battle. "Not today," she whispered, voice steady, voice fierce. "I am not your sacrifice. I am the white luna. I am the fire. I am hers and yours. None of you will take this from me." The creature lunged, and she met it head-on. Silver collided with shadow, flame collided with darkness. Every movement was fluid, precise, beautiful, terrifying. She could feel every heartbeat, every tremor, every flicker of fear around her. And she fed on it, not for cruelty, but for survival, for justice, for destiny. The alpha moved beside her, guarding her flank, his own power a complement to hers. They fought as one, predator and protector, wolf and wolf, heart and flame entwined. The enemy faltered, the shadows breaking under the brilliance of her unleashed energy. And when it was done, when the smoke cleared, when the fire died down to embers, she stood tall, unyielding, golden eyes blazing, silver fur shimmering in the morning light. She had claimed her power. She had claimed herself. And the world knew, without a shadow of doubt, that the white luna had arrived. But even as she stood victorious, chest heaving, flames flickering across her fur, she felt the weight of what was coming. Shadows still lingered in the distance. Enemies had not all fallen. Forces beyond her comprehension stirred, watching, waiting for weakness. She turned to the alpha beside her, and he met her gaze, amber and steady, unflinching. "We did it," he whispered. "Yes," she breathed, but her voice carried doubt because she knew the battles were far from over. "But what comes next?" A rustle of leaves, a tremor in the ground, a whisper in the wind, and she realized it. The world was not done with her, not done with her fire, her destiny, her prophecy, and perhaps not done testing her heart. The forest lay in uneasy quiet, the remnants of battle smouldering in the moonlight. Smoke curled around shattered trees, whispering of destruction and survival, of lives lost and promises kept. She stood at the center, silver flames flickering across her fur, golden eyes scanning the horizon, searching for threats she knew were still out there. And yet amidst the chaos she felt it, an ache, a pull, a question that burned deeper than any wound, sharper than any blade. Who would stand with her? Who would believe in her, not for what she was, but for who she truly was? Would you have chosen her, or feared her too? The wind seemed to ask, rustling the leaves in soft, mocking whispers. Would you have followed, or turned away? She looked at the alpha beside her, his presence steady, unwavering, and in that glance a flicker of hope sparked. But the world beyond, the pack, the councils, the shadows, was waiting, watching, judging. And she could feel it, the weight of every eye, every expectation, every doubt pressing against her chest like a storm that would not relent. She knelt briefly beside the fire, letting her claws dig into the earth, silver sparks dancing in response. The flames reflected in her eyes. A mirror of her heart, defiant, fierce, unbroken. She was more than a prophecy, more than a legend. She was her own fire, her own destiny, and yet the choice still hovered over her. "You will see," she whispered softly, voice trembling yet unyielding. "I am not yours to command. I am not theirs to fear. I am me." The Alpha reached for her hand, brushing it lightly with his thumb, a grounding force amidst the uncertainty. "We'll face it together," he murmured, words soft but filled with conviction. "Whatever comes, whatever they throw at us, we stand together." And then she lifted her head, eyes blazing with determination. The camera of the mind sees her, the audience feels her, and the question lingers. Is she a hero, or just a girl cursed with too much fire? The wind whipped through the trees once more, carrying her words across the forest, leaving echoes in every shadow, every heart listening. This was not the end. It could not be. Forces had gathered, betrayals had been sown, and destinies were not yet fulfilled. And as the silver flame rose higher, brighter, a reflection of her resolve, she added one final breathless plea, meant as much for the audience as for herself. If this story lit something inside you, something fierce, something untamed, subscribe to Moon King Chronicles, because here we tell tales that burn. The embers floated upward, drifting into the moonlight, a trail of hope and fire that promised more, promised danger, promised romance, promised the next chapter in her story. Even as the fire dimmed, even as her claws sank into the earth, she felt the stirrings of something greater. The ground shivered beneath her, a tremor in rhythm with the heartbeat of the world. A voice, low and distant, echoed through the shadows. She is not the only one. Or perhaps the true Alpha hasn't risen yet. A warning, a promise, a future yet unwritten. And in that moment, as her golden eyes reflected both fire and fate, she knew her journey had only begun. The forest exhaled a low, trembling sigh, as if even the trees themselves recognized the weight of what had transpired. Silver light glimmered across the clearing, flickering in the remains of the fire, catching on her fur and casting shadows that danced like spirits in the night. She stood tall, chest heaving, golden eyes blazing with the promise of power, purpose, and fury. But the victory she had claimed, though immense, though undeniable, was only the beginning. Beyond the trees, beyond the distant mountains, forces stirred. Eyes glinted in darkness, some human, some not. Plans whispered in shadow, promises made in malice. The world she had once feared now watched, waiting for her to falter. The Alpha beside her stepped close, his presence unwavering, amber eyes scanning the horizon. "You did it," he murmured. "We survived. Together." She turned to him, expression softening just for a heartbeat. "Yes," she whispered, voice low, almost reverent. "But survival is only the start. The storms are coming, and we have to be ready." A shiver ran through the clearing, rustling leaves and bending the trees. From the deepest shadows, a voice slithered forward, low and chilling. "She is not the only one." Or perhaps, the true Alpha hasn't risen. Yet. The words hung in the air, dense and foreboding, as if the world itself was speaking, and she knew in her bones that her journey was far from over. She took a step forward, claws sinking into the soil, flames licking the ground beneath her paws. Her golden eyes scanned the horizon once more, burning with both defiance and curiosity. The prophecy was hers. The fire inside her could no longer be hidden. And yet, the shadows, the unknown threats, the unfinished stories, these were waiting, watching, growing. The Alpha moved beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat of his presence, steady and grounding. "Whatever comes," he said softly, "we face it together. No one can touch you while I stand beside you." Her heart tightened at his words, fierce and tender, and she allowed herself a fleeting smile. A small spark of hope amidst the uncertainty. A reminder that even in the darkest nights, light could burn. The forest seemed to settle, almost holding its breath. The moon shone bright, silver light cascading through the branches. Her fur shimmered in the ethereal glow, golden eyes reflecting both fire and destiny. Somewhere far off, a howl broke the silence, a call to the pack, a warning to the world. The white Luna had arrived, and her story was far from finished. She turned her gaze to the horizon, whispering to herself, voice low and steady, carrying across the night. This is only the beginning. Let them come. Let the world try. I am ready. And as she lifted her head, letting the silver flames flare once more, the wind carried another whisper, chilling and tantalizing, promising danger, romance, and battles yet to come. The prophecy is alive. The fire is rising. And those who stand against her will burn. The camera of the mind lingers on her, powerful, defiant, beautiful. The fire flickers, the shadows stretch, and the screen fades, leaving the audience with a pulse of anticipation, a shiver of excitement, and the haunting knowledge the story is far from over.